why is the U.S. dollar the world's reserve currency?
The U.S. dollar is the world's reserve currency. There tends to be one. So if you're the country with the best institutions, the largest economy, the rule of law, and relatively open to commerce, a trading nation, you can be that. Now, so what happens is there tends to be one reserve currency, and it tends to be a stable equilibrium for a period of time, but it's not infinite, right? The pound, of course, was the reserve currency for many, many years, but now the dollar has been for some time.
So what do you consider risks to that changing at some point in the future?
It's a very long-run thing. It's a fairly stable equilibrium. You have to think what currency out there would compete with the dollar, and there really, would be the euro, or it's hard to see the dollar not being the reserve currency for quite some time. That doesn't mean that there can be multiple reserve currencies, sure. And so there could be an equilibrium where there are two or three, and that would be fine. But right now, it really is the dollar, and I don't see that under threat right now. Of course, in the long run, it'll come down to fiscal sustainability. It'll come down to maintaining our rule of law and democratic institutions and prosperity and being a relatively open trading nation. All those things sure. are essential.
In your opening remarks, you talked about concerns relative to our high and rising federal debt. Would that be a concern relative to the U.S. dollar maintaining?
In the long run, absolutely.
Okay. Second question, when you contemplate rate changes, how much weight do you give to the ongoing strength of current economic data versus the forward-looking weakness implied by the inverted yield curve?
I think monetary policy is always about the outlook. You have to understand and take into account the current position of the economy, which in our case is very strong, low unemployment, and stable relative price stability. But we're always about looking forward, because monetary policy works with a lag. You ask about the yield curve, and that's something we do look at, of course. Because there's a message in there. There are a couple of messages in there. You have to think carefully about what they might be, and it's not a single thing that is a dominant financial condition. There are many, many things that we look at in financial markets, and that's just one of them, but it's certainly one.
Okay. And lastly, do you believe that the Federal Reserve has the requisite tools to fulfill its mandate at the ZLB without assistance of fiscal policy?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, first of all, we do have the tools that we have, and we will use them aggressively, and we believe they will be adequate. As I mentioned, though, in a severe downturn, there comes a time when fiscal policy support is necessary and appropriate, and one of those times was during the global financial crisis and the Great Recession. So fiscal policy is very powerful, and I think is important to have. I think for the most part, the Fed can handle counter-cyclical policy, but in a steep downturn, there'll always be an important role for fiscal policy.
Okay. So is the authorization to buy a wider range of assets at the lower bound, would that be helpful or important, or not at this time?
I don't think we're seeking that. We're really not looking at that. We'll have plenty of treasuries to buy if it comes to that. If it comes to buying assets, there will be no shortage of U.S. Treasury securities, and I don't think we're looking at. Okay. You're referring to the fact that other central banks have the ability to buy equities and all kinds of different things. It's not an authority we are seeking or looking at or think that we need.